In 1999, deep inside a cave in northern Spain, archaeologists uncovered the bones of 11 children. Their skulls had been cracked open, their faces had been filleted, the flesh carved off in precise, deliberate cuts. Their leg bones had been snapped in half and scraped clean from the inside. They had been butchered exactly the same way as the deer bones found next to them. But these weren't animal remains. These were human children, and they weren't killed by some unknown predator. They were killed and eaten by another species of human 800,000 years ago. There were at least 9 different species of humans on this planet. They weren't sharing it. They were eating each other. Andrew here for Permanent Underclass, where we explore the weird stuff your therapist would tell you to avoid. The, oh cool, now I'll never sleep again side of reality. If you're easily scared, easily offended, or easily anything, you're in the wrong place. I want to tell you a story, not a myth, not a legend, a history. Your history, our history. The one they will never teach you in school because the truth is much worse than the version they gave you. We were taught that there were only one human species, us, and that we evolved in a nice clean line from apes to cavemen to modern humans. That is a lie. Not a simplification, a lie. At multiple points in the last 2 million years, there were 9 distinct species of humans alive at the same time. Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, Homo nadeli, Homo florensi, Homo lazoansi, and the Denisovians, Homo longi, Dragon Man, Homo antecessor, and the Neanderthals. 9 species, 1 planet, not enough food. They were all armed. They all had made weapons. They all knew how to kill, and many of them ate each other. I want you to imagine you're part of one family, your family, living roughly 90,000 years ago. You're Homo sapiens, the weakest, the newest, the least established of all human species on Earth. Your family group members 26, 4 extended families bound together because alone you're dead. You have a name for your group, but it would mean nothing to you now. What matters is that every single person alive today, all 8 billion of us, descended from a group no larger than yours. Maybe smaller. At your species' lowest point, there were as few as 40 breeding Homo sapiens on the entire planet. 40. You could fit the entire future of humanity on a single bus. 1 bad month, 1 raid, 1 disease, and everything that would ever be. Every civilization, every language, every song, every child ever born simply never happens. Your family has been living in East Africa, but the land is dying. The grasslands are turning to dust. The rivers are shrinking. The animals you depend on are moving north. So your family moves north too, out of the interior, through the Rift Valley into the borderlands of what's now the Levant. Modern-day Israel, Lebanon, Syria. And ahead of you, stretching in every direction, is forest. Dense, old-growth forest, canopy so thick the floor barely sees sunlight. You've heard things about this forest from other groups you've encountered. They told you not to go in. They told you something lives in there. They used a word for it that roughly translates to the strong ones or the night people. They told you about families that went in and never came out. But behind you there is nothing. Dust and heat and starvation. So your family walks into the trees. Now, before I tell you what your family found in that forest, I need you to understand what was waiting for them. Because these weren't animals, and they weren't quite human. They were something in between. And that's what made them the most dangerous thing walking the earth. Stand up right now, look at your hand, open it, close it, feel your grip. The average modern human can squeeze about 80 pounds of force with one hand. The things in that force could squeeze nearly twice that. 150 pounds or more of crushing force in a single fist. Their fingers were shorter than yours, but significantly thicker, with wide palms built for clamping down and never releasing. When one of them grabbed you, it was not a grip, it was a vice. You were not pulling free. You were going wherever it decided to take you. Their bones were 20 to 30% denser than yours. The same volume of bone, packed with more mineral, more structure, more resistance to breaking. Your upper arm bones show something disturbing. Massive, roughened patches where the muscles attached. Not smooth connection points like yours. Raised, ridged, scarred surfaces where tendons as thick as your thumb anchored muscles that were 20 to 30% larger than anything on a modern human frame. Their arms were shorter than yours, which gave them a mechanical advantage, more leverage, more torque. Every grab, every strike, every thrust of a weapon carried more force packed into a tighter arc. In close quarters, which is where all the killings happened, that geometry was devastating. They stood about 5'5", maybe 5'6" at the tallest, but they weighed 170 to 180 pounds with almost no body fat. Imagine the densest, most compact body you've ever seen. Now make the bones 20 to 30% harder. Double the grip strength. Pack another 20 to 30% more muscle onto the shoulders, arms, and legs. Widen the chest into a barrel shape that could cycle enormous volumes of oxygen. Their metabolism ran hotter than yours, burning more fuel, feeding more fast-twitch muscle fibers. They were built for explosive, short-range power. Sprinting, lunging, tackling. The injury patterns on their skeletons match modern rodeo riders. Shattered forearms, crushed ribs, fractured skulls. Healed breaks everywhere. They routinely got into violent collisions with animals that weighed 10 times what they did, and walked away. A female could overpower most modern human men. A male in his prime would destroy a champion UFC fighter in hand-to-hand combat. Higher testosterone, faster reaction times, bones that absorbed impact that would hospitalize you. And they had been training for this since the day they were born. Now their eyes. This is the detail that should make the hair on your neck stand up. Their eye sockets were significantly larger than yours, not decorative, functional. Larger eyes meant larger retinas, which meant more light-gathering capability. They could see in conditions that left you completely blind. Deep forest at dusk, moonless nights, the gray half-light before dawn when everything else is shadows. The visual processing center of their brain was proportionally larger than yours. They were built to operate in the dark, and the dark is where they hunted. Now cover it in dense body hair, insulation for ice age cold that made them look less like a person and more like something between a man and an ape. A heavy ridge of solid bone across the forehead, like a natural helmet. A face that jutted forward with a massive nose, no chin, a sloping skull, deep-set eyes that caught every trace of available light, standing motionless in the tree line at the edge of your camp, watching you fumble with your fire. This thing looked like something out of a nightmare you couldn't wake up from, close enough to your face to recognize, different enough to make your brain scream that something was fundamentally wrong. That is what was waiting in that forest, thousands of them, and they had been there for 400,000 years before your family showed up. Your family enters the forest on what would have been a Tuesday if days had names. 26 people. The oldest is a woman in her early 40s, ancient by your standards. The youngest is a boy, still nursing, strapped to his mother's chest with a strip of hide. You carry stone tools, sharpened sticks, a few pieces of dried meat. You have fire. That's it. That's the sum total of your technology. You learn to sleep in the trees within the first week, not because you want to, but because the ground is not safe after dark. You wedge your bodies into the crooks of thick branches 15 feet up. 20 when you can manage it. You lash the children to your body so they don't fall. The elderly sleep in the center where the branches are thickest. You build fires on the ground below, not for warmth, for light. The fire is the only barrier between your family and what moves through this forest when the sun goes down. You've been in the forest 3 weeks when it starts. A young male, one of the strongest in your group, goes to the stream at dusk. The stream is 60 paces from camp. He doesn't come back. The next morning, your family finds the drag marks. He'd been hit from the side. The scuffling in the dirt shows he went down hard, sideways, probably never saw it. He fought. There's blood on the rocks, fingernail gouges in the mud where he tried to claw his way back towards camp. The drag marks led into the tree line for about 100 yards. That's where you find what's left. His torso is face down. The arms are gone. Not torn off the way an animal would, separated at the shoulder joints, deliberately, with a stone edge. The cuts on the remaining tissue are precise, long, confident strokes that follow the muscle fibers. Whoever did this knew exactly where to cut. The skull had been struck from behind with something heavy enough to cave in the back of a head. Then it had been cracked open along the stem at the top. The brain is gone. The leg bones have been snapped at the thinnest point of the shaft, exactly where you'd break an animal bone to get the marrow. The marrow is gone. Whatever did this was not frenzied. It was not sloppy. It had done this before. Many times before. 2 nights later, your family loses the old woman. She'd been sleeping low. Her joints were too stiff to climb. The group hears one scream, then a sound like a heavy branch breaking, except wetter. By the time the men climb down with fire bands, she is gone. Dragged. The marks in the dirt show she clawed at the ground the entire way. You find her remains the following afternoon. She'd been processed. That is the only word for it. The skin opened down midline, organs removed, the rib cage pried apart. And looking at the fracture patterns, whatever opened her chest did it with its hands strong enough to crack human ribs apart like dry sticks. The jaw had been forced open beyond its natural range until the connective tissue tore. The tongue was gone, cut out at the root. The cheek muscles had been sliced off both sides of the face in clean parallel cuts. The thigh flesh stripped to the bone, everything taken, everything useful consumed or carried away. The remains dumped with no more ceremony than you'd give the guts of a fish. Your family moves camp. You move again 2 days later. It doesn't matter, they follow. Or maybe it's a different group. You have no way to know. You never see them clearly, just shapes at the edge of the firelight. Something standing in the shadow that you only catch in the corner of your eye, and when you turn your head, it's gone. But the smell stays, heavy, animal, musk and sweat and something sour underneath, like rotten meat and wet stone. It's so strong your eyes water. A child goes missing in broad daylight, a girl, maybe 6, playing 20 feet from her mother at the edge of the clearing. The mother turns her back for less than a minute. The girl is gone. No scream, no struggle anyone heard. Small footprints leading towards the trees. Larger prints beside them, much larger. Barefoot. Wider than any foot in your group. The prints disappear into the underbrush. Nobody follows. Nobody says why. Everybody knows why. Your family of 26 is now 22. You will be 19 by next moon. You're not dying of disease. You're not starving. You're being hunted by something that walks on two legs, uses tools, operates at night, and takes your people alive when it can. You can't fight what you can't see. You can't outrun something that knows this terrain better than you ever will. You can't hide from something that's twice your grip strength. Night vision you'll never have, and 400,000 years of ambush instinct bred into every fiber of its body. And the worst part, the thing that curls inside your stomach, when you let yourself think about it at night wedged into the branches, listening to something heavy moving below you, is that these things are not animals. They bury their dead. They make tools. They communicate with each other. They coordinate. They have strategy. They're not killing your family because they're hungry. There's plenty of game in this forest. They're killing you because you are in their territory, and they are making absolutely sure you understand that. If this kind of content keeps you up at night, do me a favor, like and subscribe. And if you want more of this, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Permanent Underclass, and on X at The Underclasser. We post stuff there that doesn't always make it to YouTube. This is what it was like for Homo sapien for 100,000 years. Not a war between armies, a slaughter. A species that owned the dark versus a species that feared it. Every time Homo sapien pushed north out of Africa into the Levant, the archaeological record shows the same pattern. Human camps appeared, human tools appeared, then silence. The artifacts vanish. Their artifacts fill the gap. We pushed in. They pushed us out. Again and again and again for 100,000 years. Your family, the 19 that remain, does not give up. Your family can't give up. There's nowhere to go back to. So your family does what Homo sapien has always done when everything else fails. You adapt. It doesn't happen in a single generation. It takes thousands of years. But somewhere along the line, your descendants, the great-great-grandchildren of the people who survived those first terrible months in the forest, figure out something that night. People never do. They learn to cooperate with strangers. The night people live in small, isolated family groups, 15, 20 blood relatives, fiercely loyal to their own. But they don't trade. They don't network. When one group figures out a better technique, it dies with that group. Your descendants start building alliances between unrelated families, sharing tool-making secrets, trading materials across hundreds of miles. When one group learns something, every group learns it within a generation. The night people remain islands. Your descendants become a network. And then your descendants invent the thing that changes everything. Not the spear. Every species had spears. Night people had been driving heavy thrusting spears into the bodies of mammoths and rhinos for longer than your species had existed. What your descendants invented was the ability to make a weapon fly. Lighter shafts, weighted tips balanced for distance. Spear throwers, atlas, that double the length of your arm and tripled the velocity of the projectile, and eventually, possibly, the bow. For the first time in 100,000 years of being slaughtered in the dark, your descendants could kill from 30, 40 feet away. You didn't have to close the distance anymore. You didn't have to get within an arm's reach of something that could crush your skull with one hand. You could stand in the daylight where your eyes worked and theirs were at a disadvantage, and put sharpened stone through a chest before it ever reached you. Against a species that had spent 400,000 years perfecting closed-range killing, this was a death sentence. It didn't matter how strong you were if you were dead before you got close. The night people had evolved for a kind of war that suddenly didn't exist anymore, and your descendants brought something else, something invisible, diseases, tropical pathogens that Homo sapiens' immune systems had co-evolved with over 1 million years in Africa. Manageable for you, catastrophic for them. They had no antibodies, no resistance. Their children died first, then the elderly, then the hunters. It's the same thing that happened when Europeans arrived in the Americas and wiped out 90% of the native population. Except this was the species against species, and the dying lasted millennia. The night people's world shrank. Their territory compressed from spanning all of Europe and the Middle East and Central Asia down to scattered pockets in southern Spain, Croatia, Gibraltar, isolated mountain caves. The groups got smaller. 15, 10. The DNA tells the rest. Catastrophic inbreeding. Parents who were half siblings, cousins, maybe closer. Genetic diversity collapsing. Birth defects rising. Children born weaker than their parents for the first time in 400,000 years. And in those final caves, the cannibalism reached its worst. Not raiding other groups anymore. There were no groups left. They were eating their own. At El Cidron Cave in Spain, a Neanderthal family shows the hallmarks of starvation, cannibalism. Scientists describe this period as past 11:30 on the extinction clock. Midnight was coming. The species that had dominated the dark for 400,000 years was being consumed by disease, by your descendants, by the climate, and by themselves. Around 400,000 years ago, the fossil record goes silent. The night people vanish. The scientific consensus is that they went extinct. Full stop. Case closed. But extinct is a conclusion based on an absence, the absence of bones. And the absence of bones is not the absence of a species. The Denisovians, an entire branch of humanity, were completely unknown until 2010. Their existence was discovered from a single finger bone in a Siberian cave. One bone, one species. Homo lozonius wasn't identified until 2019. Homo longini, Dragon Man, wasn't described until 2021 from a skull hidden in a wall for 85 years. We keep finding new species of humans because we keep barely finding them. The fossil records is not a consensus, it's a collection of lucky accidents. Now think about what the night people were. Cold adapted, hair covered, built for dense forest and mountain terrain. Superior night vision, able to survive on almost anything. Masters of stealth. They had been ambush predators for hundreds of thousands of years, and they had spent 10,000 years learning one devastating lesson. When Homo sapien finds you, you die. The ones who stood and fought were slaughtered. The ones who stayed on open ground got sick. The ones who clustered together inbred into collapse. But what about the ones who ran? The small bands, maybe just a few families, who retreated into the deepest, darkest, most inaccessible wilderness on Earth. Not the coasts, not the valleys, the mountains, the ancient forests. The places your descendants had no reasons to go. Not all of them stayed to die, and I want to introduce you to some people who never got the memo that they went extinct. People have been living alongside whatever is in those forests for thousands of years longer than Western science has existed. And their stories don't sound like myths, they sound like field reports. The Stalis people in British Columbia, the ones who gave the word Sasquatch to the world, don't treat this as folklore. This is woven into the foundation of who they are as people. The word Sasquatch is an anglicized pronunciation of Sasquatch, their word. And it doesn't mean monster, it doesn't mean beast, it translates closest to hairy man, a person, not an animal. a different kind of person. The Sasquatch is on the Sastel's national flag. It's carved into their ceremonial drums and masks. It's painted into rock art in their territory and has been dated between 3,000 and 7,000 years old. Their ancestors were painting these beings on cave walls when Egypt was building the pyramids. This isn't new. This isn't a trend. This is ancient knowledge passed down from the same weight and seriousness as their migration histories and ancestral lineages. And their stories are specific, disturbingly specific. According to Staley's oral history, the Sasquatch used to live in great numbers in the region, around Harrison Lake and Chernalis Lake. They formed two large tribes. They fought wars with each other and with humans. Due to the constant warfare and the expansion of human populations in their territory, the Sasquatch were devastated. Their numbers dwindled to the point of near extinction. Their survivors retreated into the most remote, inaccessible terrain available. And here's the part that stopped me cold when I read it. The Stalists say that a small remaining group still gather every summer on a mountain called Sasquatch Mountain. Before the main group arrive, scouts are sent out first to investigate the area and make sure it's safe. Most sightings, according to the Sastels, are of these scouts. You need to sit with that for a second. A species that once had a large population, that formed tribes, that fought territorial wars, was driven nearly to extinction by completion with humans. That retreated deep into the wilderness, and the survivors still operate in small, cautious groups with lookouts and seasonal gathering points. Does that sound like a fairy tale to you? Or does that sound exactly precisely like what the fossil record shows happened to the night people 40,000 years ago? Sastel's elder, Kelsey Charlie, describes them in this way. He calls them bear-like people who hide in caves and use hearths to keep warm. They come out in different forms. They speak a language. They are gifted. His grandfather told them that you're not to be scared of them, and that they were not monsters. He said that if you're able to see one, hear one, or find its footprints, good fortune is coming your way, because it's making sure you know that it's there and that you still have to live by the rules of the land. The Sastels don't fear the Sasquatch. They respect it, the way you'd respect something that's been there for a long time before you and will be there long after you're gone. But the Sastels aren't alone, and this is where it starts to get truly unsettling. Move south. The Hoopa of Northern California describe giant men who live in the remote mountains, rarely seen, deeply feared. These stories were specifically told to children to keep them from wandering too far into the forest alone. Think about that. What kind of story do you tell a child to keep them out of the woods? You tell them something real, something the community has actually encountered. You don't waste a generation's worth of warnings on a bedtime story. Move east. The Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois Confederacy, describe a creature they called Ottenarhe, the stone giant, covered in hair, extremely aggressive, territorial, not something you seek out, something you avoid. Further south, the Cherokee call theirs Tulskalu, the great slant-eyed giant. He lives in a place called Tussangili, a deep hidden canyon in the mountains. He is described as a powerful being, immensely large, covered in hair, with sloping eyes and a body built for violence. The Cherokee don't describe Tuskalu as a ghost or a spirit. They describe him as a physical being who lives in a specific physical space. The Lummi Nation of Washington calls them Tuskewas. The Coast Salish go further. They warn their children never to say the creature's name out loud because saying the name might summon it from the forest. That is not how you talk about something imaginary. That's how you talk about something dangerous that might actually show up. But the tradition that shook me the most comes from the Skagit people. The Skagit don't describe Sasquatch as an ape or a spirit or a mythological creature. They describe it as a tribe of human beings, humans who at some point in the ancient past adapted to living at night, who, through thousands of years of isolation and a completely different way of surviving, evolved into something nocturnal, something that looked less and less like the rest of us, something ape-like, something that found it easier to survive by avoiding all contact with other humans, a tribe that went into the forest and never came back and changed. Does that sound familiar? Because it should. Now, lay all these descriptions side by side. Every tribe, independently across thousands of miles and thousands of years of complete separation from each other. Large, bipedal, covered in hair, immensely strong, nocturnal, intelligent. Not animal intelligence, but human intelligent. Uses caves and hearths, territorial, operates in small groups, avoids human contact at all costs. Found only in the deepest, most inaccessible wilderness, a species that was once numerous, that formed tribes, that fought war, and that was driven to near extinction by humans. Now, lay the science next to it. A species that dominated the forest and mountains of the northern hemisphere for 400,000 years ago, cold-adapted, hair-covered, barrel-chested, enormous, strong, with grip strength nearly double a modern human's, superior night vision from oversized eyes, intelligent enough to make tools, use fire, communicate with language, bury their dead, create art, hunted in small family groups, lived in caves, driven to near extinction by completion with Homo sapiens, climate change, disease, and warfare. The last confirmed population retreating into the most isolated terrain available. The stories match, not loosely, not poetically, specifically, detail for detail. The indigenous people of this continent have been describing the night people for thousands of years. They just didn't call them Neanderthals, they call them Sasquatch, Tumesquez, Tuskalu, Oneteyarahe, and they never stopped telling us they're still out there. 9 species of humans walked this planet. They hunted each other, they ate each other, they drove each other to the edge of annihilation. We tell ourselves we're the only ones left. We tell ourselves the war ended 40,000 years ago. Think about your family, the 26 who walked into the forest 90,000 years ago, the 19 who survived those first terrible months, the descendants who learned how to fight back, who pushed the night people out of the valleys, off the plains, away from the rivers. Your family won, but winning a war doesn't mean killing every last soldier. It means driving the enemy so deep into retreat that they disappear from view. The Sestales say the survivors still gather on a mountain every summer. They send scouts first. They check that it's safe. After 40,000 years of being hunted by us, they still check that it's safe. That it's not the behavior of a myth, that is the behavior of a species that remembers what we did. The deepest forests on this continent have never been fully mapped. There are valleys in the Pacific Northwest where no human being has set foot in recorded history. The boreal forest of northern Canada covers 1.2 billion acres, and the people were here first, the people whose ancestors lived alongside whatever is out there for thousands of years before Europeans arrived. They never stopped telling us the truth. Something retreated into those woods a very long time ago. Something that remembers what your family did to its family. Something that learned through generations of slaughter that the safest thing it could ever do is stay hidden from you. And maybe the reason we've never found it is because it doesn't exist. It's because 400,000 years of being the apex predator and 40,000 years of being the prey, it's simply better at this than we are. It knows the dark, it knows the forest, and it has every reason in the world to make sure you never see it coming. Your family won the war, but something survived it. And it's still out there, watching from the same dark tree line, the same way it watched your ancestors, the same way it has always watched. If this kind of content keeps you up at night, do me a favor, like and subscribe. And if you want more of this, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Permanent Underclass and on X at The Underclasser. We post stuff there that doesn't always make it to YouTube.